Welcome back to the Revealed Report. I am your host, John Wilson. Well, it looks like the government shutdown is coming to an end, and it is coming to an end exactly like I thought it would come to an end, because I said either one of two things is going to happen. Either some of the more sensible Democrats, if we can call them that, will either begin to cave to the pressure and come to the other side of the aisle and join with the Republicans to end the government shutdown because of the pressure that Donald Trump is putting on both sides, both the GOP and the radical left. And also because the GOP, for the first time in my lifetime, was actually standing up against the intimidation factor of the radical left, for which I'm very proud of them for. I think they've done a great and wonderful job. Said either A, some of the what I would call more sensible Democrats are going to come to across the aisle and they're going to begin to negotiate, they're going to reason, or they're just going to pass the clean resolution altogether, or the GOP is going to listen to Donald Trump and they're going to take the nuclear option. They're going to end the filibuster and they're going to reopen the government and go out and tell the American people that we actually care about you. It was the radical left that wanted to use your pain and suffering as leverage, keeping you from getting a paycheck, keeping you from getting your SNAP benefits or what else was going on. You would have to stand in long lines to get through TSA. You would have to worry about flying and all of these different things that we actually care about you. We didn't want to end the filibuster. We did not want to take the nuclear option. We're not trying to be hypocritical about it, even though the radical left will claim that. Rather, we care about you when they do not. They do not care about the American people. Rather, they care about their collective agenda, their collective ideology. And as long as you, as the American people, fit into their collective ideology, they're going to care for you. The moment you don't, they're willing to squash you, stomp on you, use you and abuse you, and disregard and discard you, just like every Marxist fascistic regime would do. However, I believe that Trump knew exactly what he was doing by putting pressure both on the GOP and the radical left. He would help the GOP have a spine to stand against the radical left's intimidation, and also begin to make the radical left worry and be concerned at the fact that just maybe, the GOP will hold out. Just maybe the GOP will not cower, will not bow to the pressure this time. Just maybe they'll stand against all of that. And because of that pressure, all of a sudden you find that the radical left or some of the sensible Democrats would begin to come across the aisle and they would pass the clean resolution. So I'm very thankful for the GOP holding out. I've been saying that it doesn't matter about the King's protest, the No King's protest. It doesn't matter what type of intimidation factor they're given. It doesn't matter how much they lie to the American people. It doesn't matter how much they try to control the narrative. If you're willing to stand for what's right, if you're not willing to bow down to the pressure of the radical left, and you'll actually stand against them and package your message clearly, in due time, it will win. However, you can see that the radical left, they're upset with Chuck Schumer. They actually want Chuck Schumer to step down. They're upset. Gavin Newsom, or Nuisance, is upset. You find that the AOCs are upset. Crazy Bernie Sanders, that looks like he should be feeding pigeons on the park bench. They're all upset with the sensible Democrats that passed the clean resolution, because they never wanted these things to happen. They never wanted this to take place because they were using it as leverage, because they thought they can win elections off of it. And when they began to win in Virginia, especially, we knew that they would probably win New Jersey and we knew that they would win New York City. But when they won Virginia, that emboldened them because they felt like they were winning. They felt like they were in victory, and they felt like this was no time to stop the presses, because the radical left does not know any limitations. They don't know how to stop themselves. They don't know how to keep themselves from overindulging and overplaying their hand. One of the biggest reasons they lost the last presidential election is because they overplayed their hand. They pushed their critical race theory too far. They pushed all their gender ideology too far because they don't know how to restrain themselves. And the big reason they don't is because they're carnal by nature. They don't have godly principles to restrict and to restrain themselves and to begin to bring their own desires and appetites under subjection. The moment they feel a little bit of victory, it emboldens them to keep pressing their ideas upon the general public, and they feel like they can just keep pushing it, and you're just going to keep buying into it. They don't know how to be delicate with that. They don't know how to balance all of that. They believe that people are ignorant, that they're stupid, that they're dumb enough to buy into all their lies. So when they start getting a little taste of victory, They don't just try to temper it. They want to go full force in, and they let their mask begin to fall. And you see exactly who they are. The sensible Democrats knew that in the long run is we're going to pay the price for that. Even Jon Stewart, the radical Democrat, former Hollywood guy, he even knew that the midterm still is not going to look good. Yes, we took New Jersey. Yes, we took New York City. Yes, we took Virginia. But if we keep down this path, it's not going to look good for the Democrat Party, because the GOP is going to roar back, because people are going to catch on to the reason why the government is shut down. You can say that it's Trump, just like you can say Russian collusion, hoax, and all of these things. You can begin to say that the GOP is wrong, that Trump is wrong, but in due time, they get exposed. The radical left doesn't understand that. Some of the sensible Democrats really do understand that. But the radical left does not know how to temper themselves. So when they won the elections, they felt emboldened to keep using the pain of the American people and keep the very budget at hostage, to use it as leverage to try to keep pushing on the American people. Now, I find it amazing because they're all complaining at the fact that affordable health care is going to become less affordable. And we find that they're complaining about the health care right now. But the health care system we have is not Trump's health care system. It's the Democrat health care system that they're complaining about and saying it's going to get even worse. Now, listen to it from crazy Bernie Sanders himself.
Vermont.
I understand that the way the process has been developed, it is impossible to delay the votes that are going to take place. And if that were not the case, that is certainly what I would do, because I think it is important that the American people fully understand what is being voted on today. Everybody in America knows that our current healthcare system is broken, it is dysfunctional, it is cruel, it is by far the most expensive healthcare system in the world, and the only healthcare system of any major country that does not guarantee healthcare to all people as a human right, covering every man, woman, and child. We are unique in that respect. And yet tonight, what this Senate is about to do is make a horrific situation even worse.
Okay, let's first break this down. He's saying it's a fundamental human right for everybody to get free health care, meaning also illegals. This is what this is all about. See, they wanted to blow out the budget on a broken healthcare system called affordable healthcare, or Obamacare, and they wanted to blow out the budget, giving trillions of dollars to illegals. And yet the reason it's broken is because what they did is they played upon the American people, and they said, we have a broken healthcare system, which they were correct. But President Obama came in with the promise that he was going to fix the healthcare system. He was going to make it more affordable and more efficient. He also lied to us and said, if you like your doctor, you can keep your doctor. It was all a hoax. It all was a lie, because this is how the radical leftists work. This is how the Marxists work. They begin to play on bad situations, and they sell to you that they have the answer. And then when you buy into it, you get an even worse and more oppressive system. This is exactly what happened in Russia when they were in crisis, and there was a lot of hunger that was going on under Tsar Nicholas. You find then Vladimir Lenin comes in and he promises it's going to get better. And all of a sudden they go into Marxism and they begin to be crushed under that oppressive tyranny. That's what the radical left does. They play on bad situations and say they have the answers. And when you buy into it, then you get a worse system. Yes, we have problems with our healthcare system, but let me remind you that the wealthy people up in Canada who have socialistic healthcare are willing to come down into the United States to pay to get better healthcare. So even as broken as it is, it's still better than what a lot of other countries have. In addition to that, there are some countries that are so poor they don't have any form of healthcare. They're just trying to do whatever they can to survive. So Bernie Sanders is acting like we have the worst system altogether. That is not true. It's not a perfect system. It's not a great system. He said it was already the most expensive healthcare system. Well, Bernie, who should be out feeding pigeons on a park bench somewhere, my question is, whose healthcare system was it? It was Barack Hussein old that came in and sold us the idea of affordable health care. It was the Democrats that put affordable health care together. So if you don't like it, Bernie, you all failed at it, because it is your healthcare system that you're complaining about. Now they're claiming it's going to get even worse. And what their solution to this is blow out our budget with trillions and trillions of dollars on a healthcare system that is broken, it's inefficient, and we are spending much taxpayer dollars blowing out the budget, giving free healthcare to everybody. On top of it, they want to have 42 million plus people on SNAP benefits. I'm for helping the poor. When you help the poor, you lend to the Lord. What I'm not for is incentivizing laziness where people no longer work, where you have men that sit and play Xbox all day and they don't want to get up and they don't have a drive to work and they wonder why they're depressed all the time because they have no purpose in life. They're not living for anything outside of satisfaction and gratification for the moment, which has no purpose whatsoever in life. And yet the Democrat Party comes along and they want to buy your votes. It's like LBJ, who was willing to break up the black family by incentivizing women to have children out of wedlock so that they can get money handed to them by the government to buy your votes. That's what the radical left does all the time. It was real simple. The government didn't have to be shut down for 40 plus days. They could have passed this long time ago, this clean resolution, and the government would have been running. But because of their wacky Trump derangement syndrome, because they wanted to use the pain as leverage against the American people and against Donald Trump so that they can push their radical ideology and act like they're the noble ones, they kept the government shut down. This was not Trump that shut the government down. It was not Trump that kept the government shut down. And the proof of that is when those 8 Democrats came across the side of the aisle to the Republican side and began to join with them to reopen the government, that is proof itself that this was not Trump shutting down the government and keeping the government shut down. This was not the GOP keeping the government shut down. Even John Fetterman just a few weeks ago told us that we need to own it as the Democrats. We are shutting down the government. Now, he said he understood the reason why, but he does not believe in using it as leverage against Trump when it's hurting the American people. And I can't believe that John Fetterman is the voice of reason for the Democratic left. What a wacky day it is when John Fetterman, who can't even put on a suit and tie and look respectable inside of the halls of Congress, is the very voice of reasoning with the radical left. But you know what the radical left does now? What socialist, communist, Marxists always do. They eat their own. Because if you're willing to put the American people above the party elitist ideology, then they're going to destroy you. They'll trample on you. You only have worth when you are fitting into the collective whole, when you are fitting into the collective ideology. And you must always put party above the people. You must always put the collectivist ideology above the people that you're supposed to be serving, because your allegiance is not to the American public. Your allegiance is not to the nation, but your allegiance is to the communist, Marxist, radical, blended with fascistic ideology. Your party is what matters the most. This is no different than what the USSR believed in. This is no different than what China Communist Party believes in. Party comes above everything else and everybody else, including your own self. And so that's why they want to get rid of Chuck Schumer. That's why they're willing to knife him in the back. And yet these are the people that's supposed to be running our country and taking care of us from cradle to grave. These are the people that want to enslave people to themselves and to their ideology for their self purposes, for their self gain. And the moment you go against them, they're willing to knife you in the back because they don't believe in the rights of the individual. It was Woodrow Wilson, you know, the father of digressivism, who they all love and want to follow, who laughed and mocked Thomas Jefferson when he talked about the inalienable rights given to the individual, because he didn't like the individual having these inalienable rights. He believed that government should be the powerful, almighty one that's looking out for the good of all the people from cradle to grave, that it's going to be a Leviathan ran by some administrative state, some deep state with unelected bureaucrats. So the president, the senator, the House of Representatives, all of them are just talking heads that don't mean anything. But there's a shadowy government behind the scenes that are pulling on the public minds to take care of you from cradle to grave. That they wanted a big government that would rule in every aspect of your life because they know what's better for you than you do. They want to control your kids. They want to control what you can eat. They want to control what you can drive. They want to control what you cook on. You can't have that gas oven. You can't have that gas SUV, because we're here to save you. We are your saviors, your messiahs, to make sure that nothing bad happens to you. And we can take care of you as long as you vote for us in the midterms, as long as you vote for us to be your president, as long as you let us tax you to death so we can redistribute your money. We'll make sure you're never hungry. We'll make sure you're always taken care of and you're always fed. We'll make sure that you have clothes on your back. We'll make sure that there's no more tsunamis and hurricanes and tornadoes. We'll make sure there's no more hatred and racism and bigotry in the world. There's going to be no more wars and rumors of wars. We can solve all of the problems if you just let us have all of the power over you, if you cough up all of your freedoms, if you give us all of your liberty, and also hand us your guns so you can't stand against us. Give us your religion, give us your freedom of speech, give us your ability to say what you want to say on social media, and we'll make sure we're taking care of you. We'll take care of your kids. Don't worry. You don't have to raise your kids, and you don't have to put your values into the kids. We know what's better than you parents. We'll push our ideology into them so that they'll be good people when they get older. So they're not like those evil Republicans that want you to be free, that don't want you to be taxed to death, that want you to be able to have choice in your life, that want you to be able to govern your own life and lead your kids with the principles that you believe in. But don't worry, vote for the radical left and they'll take care of you cradle to grave until there's no more money in our nation, because our nation's been bankrupt. That's the grip, and that's the game of the radical left. And yet we find that the GOP is finally waking up to what we've been saying for many, many years now. We've been trying to say that the radical left only plays by intimidation. What they do is they create all of these boogeymen, our women, our boogie fluid, for all I care, because the radical left can't figure out they're men or women half the time. So the boogie fluid person, now you got a boogie fluid thing that's this big boogie thing that's going to destroy you, whether it's climate change, global warming, global cooling, because we got to redefine it based on the decade, and then we'll just call it climate change so we don't have to quit. We don't have to keep giving it a new term every 10 years. That's going to destroy us. So cough up your freedom. It's always one dangerous thing. You know, I don't understand how anybody likes the radical left. They're a poison of fear in our nation. They weaponize COVID-19 to pump fear into our nation so you would cough up your freedoms and your liberties. I've been saying it for many, many years now, and I'm still going to say it, that the way they operate is they always create some safety concern, because when you create a safety concern, people will cough up their freedoms for safety. And at some point in time, we have to reject all of that, because what that has allowed is the radical left to overregulate our life from cradle to grave. They want to be involved in every nook and cranny of our life, and they want to slap on some kind of regulation until businesses are fleeing out of their cities and going to cities where there's less regulation, and they can't seem to figure it out, because you cannot slap regulations and high taxes on everything and have a prosperous society. It was John Adams, it was Thomas Jefferson that understood that when you rack up a debt to redistribute wealth or for government causes, when you begin to rack up that debt, you are selling out the future of America. You are selling out the future, because you're going to have 5 and 6 generations down the road that don't even get the benefits that you want right now. And yet they don't get it because we burnt them all up, such as Social Security, when we can't have it anymore because we bankrupt our nation, when there is no more SNAP benefits because there's nobody to tax anymore because we bankrupt everybody. And yet they're still going to be paying for things they don't even benefit for, because we selfishly allowed ourselves to be controlled by a radical left that allowed us to be that sold us a bill of goods that we bought into, and we coughed up our freedom and allowed them to bankrupt our country. That's the grit of the radical left. And our founders didn't believe in it. Our founders didn't want it. And still today, we don't want it today. The radical left, if they could not buy your votes, then they would not have anybody voting for them. That's just the fact. Their principles aren't good enough. That's why they have to lie to the American people all the time. They don't just come out and tell you what they want you to know about them. They have to lie. They have to deceive you. And then they have to buy your votes. Now I think Trump is trying to play the game back, because with this tariff, tariffs. Now he wants to give $2,000 out to people. And I don't actually agree with that. I want him to pay off the national debt. That means more to me than $2,000 in the bank account. However, I understand what President Trump is doing. He's playing their game right back on them. He's using their weapon right back on them. And he's going out there now that the government's reopened. Now he's considering giving these $2,000 checks so that he can buy the votes, so that we would have a strong Republican Congress and House of Representatives. And in 2028, we'll have a strong Republican president. I'm not saying I agree with it, but I understand the game that he's playing. So watch what the radical left does. The radical left is they were trying to weaponize the government shutdown. They were trying to use it as leverage. They were trying to flip the script to tell you that this is Trump's shutdown. This is the GOP shutdown. They're the bad people. And they pass in right now what they could have passed the entire time. But yet they didn't want to do that because of their Trump Derangement Syndrome, because they wanted to keep dumping trillions of dollars into a broken healthcare system, and they wanted to give it to illegals, meaning that they were more willing for veterans, they were more willing for military personnel, they were more willing to give to illegals than they were to TSA agents, to pilots that are flying commercial airlines, that then taking care of veterans, to taking care of patriots, to taking care of military. They were more worried about giving illegal immigrants free health care than the American people that may actually need SNAP benefits. Now, I don't believe 42 million people should be on SNAP benefits. However, there are some people that genuinely need help. But the radical left was willing to use their pain, their suffering as leverage for a wacky budget that makes absolutely no sense. And really what it is, they just want to play noble and go against Trump, because most of the 80 to 20 or 90 to 10 issues, they're on the wrong side. The Republican people, the Republican government is appealing to the masses. Most people don't want boys to be going in little girls' locker rooms and to bathrooms. They don't want men acting like women and playing in women's sports. They don't really want to be taxed to death. These are losing issues. So what they did is they picked one issue that is of great concern: healthcare. Everybody is concerned about having good health care. So they begin to pick something that they think they can win on, and they begin to play the noble one, flip the script, deceive the people, lie to the people, and act like they're fighting for you, while they're allowing American people not to get paychecks, not to get SNAP benefits, allowing commercial airline pilots not to get paid so that they can blow out the budget on giving it to illegal immigrants. But yet they care for you. So they use it as leverage until they win the elections of Virginia, New Jersey, and New York City. Why is that? Because they don't need to use it as leverage anymore. Because the sensible Democrats, they thought, well, we can use it as leverage. We can win these elections, and then we'll back up, because in the long term, it's going to be a losing idea, especially if the GOP actually takes the nuclear option, which they probably should have done. They probably should have listened to President Trump. But if they would have took the nuclear option, got rid of the filibuster, went out there and told the American people that we didn't want to do this, but they're holding you at hostage and we're going to make sure you're being taken care of, then those sensible Democrats knew that that was going to hurt them in the midterms, and it would especially hurt them in 2028. So they began to back up. They began to cross the aisle, 8 of them, and now they're going to get the government reopened, it looks like. Pretty close to being done right now. This is how the radical left plays. Everything is a game to them. They're sincere in nothing. They're genuine in nothing. Everything is a political game to them. Human lives don't really mean anything unless they can use human lives as a pawn. It was all leveraged so that they can win those elections and then back up and have 8 sensible ones come to the Republican side of the aisle. Now, the radicals, they don't have enough brain cells to understand how to play the game right, because they overindulge themselves and they have no restraint on themselves, and they overplay their hand until they finally lose. And now you got Bernie Sanders out there saying that it's already a messed up system. Well, you're the one that caused it. You and the ones that wanted to fundamentally transform America. Because remember, if you wanted to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor. They've been lying to us. All throughout this, they've been lying to us. Now, I have a I have a revealed dispatch report that I'd like to read to you about this, called Held Hostage: How the Radical Left Used the Budget, the Taxpayer, and the American Citizen to Fund a Broken System. I quote. I think I quote. There it is. Sorry. Well, the radical left has done it again. They duct taped the Democrats, the American taxpayer, and the entire federal budget to a chair. And they're waving a healthcare ransom note like some political B-movie villain. Their demand, trillions more for a broken healthcare system that doesn't heal anyone, but sure keeps the left politically healthy. Because when you're promised free care to illegal immigrants while Americans can't afford their own prescriptions, that's not compassion. That's corruption with a noble mask. They've called it affordable health care, or they've called it Affordable Care Act for over a decade. But let's be honest, it's about as affordable as gas in California and about as caring as a DMV worker on a Monday morning. The game plan, here's the left favorite play. Ready? Number one, break the system. Number two, blame the GOP for not fixing it fast enough. And number three, pretend to be the heroes for the mess they made. They weaponized the misery of hurting Americans as election bait, and it worked. They snatched victories in New York, New Jersey, and Virginia by dangling health care for all like it's the cure for cancer. Spoiler, it's not. But as always, the radical left can't help itself. Like a toddler with a new marker, they just have to scribble all over the walls. The overplay. 8 somewhat sensible Democrats finally said enough is enough and crossed the aisle to reopen the government. Could have done that weeks ago, but apparently Trump Derangement Syndrome was flaring up again, clouding judgment and inflating egos. The GOP held firm for once. Sorry if that popped out on you. I got a pop in my ear. Anyways, 8 sensible Democrats said enough is enough and crossed the side of the aisle because they're Trump. They no longer, I guess they got over their Trump derangement syndrome. The GOP held firm for once. And with Trump turning up the heat and daring them to take the nuclear option, the left cracked under their own pressure. Turns out you can only shout democracy for so long before voters notice you're the one holding the government hostage. The irony of it all. Democrats lecture Republicans about affordable health care, but the unaffordable healthcare system they built is the reason America's health is in financial cardiac arrest. And the cherry on top, they made sure illegals got front row seats at the doctor's office while citizens wait in the lobby. Now the radicals are eating their own. The latest on the menu, Chuck Schumer. That's right. The man who's been herding cats in the Senate is now being told to step down by the very cats he tried to feed. The moral of the story, this week's little shutdown showdown proves one thing. When the GOP actually grows a spine, America wins. No more playing nice with bullies in suits. No more caving to bipartisan blackmail. The radical left plays power politics. It's time conservatives play to win. Because the truth is simple as this. The party that actually reopens the government while protecting taxpayers and citizens will always look like the adults in the room. And right now, the GOP just took the high ground, while the left is busy arguing over who gets to keep the broken megaphone. The radical left keeps pretending to care about your health, but it's really your dependence they're after, because a sick, broken, scared population is easier to control than a strong, free, faith-filled one. Keep standing strong, GOP. Stay bold, America. And to the left, maybe next time, try governing instead of gaslighting, and you might actually win. So I'm glad to see that the radical left and all of their attempts, the No Kings rally did nothing. All of their attempts, all they're trying to flip the script and control the narrative and spill out their lies through the mainstream media did absolutely nothing. But I'll tell you what did do something is when the GOP actually grew a spine and stood up against the intimidation. And the only reason it happened is because of that orange man bad with too many red ties and his wild hair. And yet it was him that was putting pressure on them. That pressure is what actually did it, because they thought, well, maybe the GOP will actually take the nuclear option. Maybe they will actually end the filibuster. And maybe for the first time, they have our backs against the wall. And it was that pressure and the GOP standing up against them is why the government is going to reopen. So for all the Americans out there, I want to tell you, it was not Trump's shutdown. It was Chuck Schumer's shutdown, who was in fear fear of the AOCs and the radical left. This was a leftist shutdown. The radical left did not care about your SNAP benefits. The radical left did not care about your paychecks. The radical left did not care about the well-being of American people. It was the GOP. It was the Republican side of the aisle. It was President Donald Trump that was not just caring about the moment, but also caring about your future, that we don't sell our 4 and 5 generations down the road, down the river without a paddle to get back, that we don't destroy the future of America because we're selfish in the moment. They cared about the American people now, and they care about the future of America as well. So let this be a lesson that the left has been lying to you ever since Woodrow Wilson and the father of digressivism, and even before that. The truth of the matter is the Democrat Party has been the party of slavery, the party of segregation, the party of Jim Crow. They were the party of reverse racism just to try to buy votes and to control the masses of the people. They are also the one that wanted to push a globalized great reset where they human re-engineer people and you own nothing and be happy, because they want to control you from cradle to grave, because they believe they know what's best for you. They are liars and they deceive the masses continually. And it's time that the American people do not fall back asleep. The reason why there was a red wave in the presidential election, the reason why Donald Trump took all swing states, is because they overplayed their hand with lies. 8 sensible Democrats do not want to do that again. But we need to call it out and remind the American people that they are no more sensible than what they used to be. The Democrat Party has always been an anti-American party. They have always been an anti-the people party. They have always been a party of controlling the masses for their own self-gain, their own self-purposes, and their own self-wealth. And it's time for the American people to reject it. It's time for the American people to realize that Donald Trump is not Hitler. We are not fascists. We are not the Gestapo. We are not the Ku Klux Klan 2.0. Rather, we are the people that are trying to give you the greatest liberty and freedom that you can have as an individual, as a family, that can go to your church and worship your God without the fear of government trying to shutter down the doors of your churches, trying to bankrupt you now and bankrupt your future. The only thing the Democrat Party has is their Santa Claus. They like to give out free gifts because everybody loves Santa Claus. And in this case, they wanted to sing Feliz Navidad as they blow out the budget and give free health care to illegals and incentivize people to pour into our country without assimilation so you can get more Mom Donnies to become the mayor of cities and also to take over much of our nation by flipping it inside out, upside down, by overwhelming the system with immigration without assimilation, so people begin to vote for what they used to vote for, those ideologies that used to resemble the countries they fled from. Now, I believe Texas should probably build a border wall. I believe that Florida should also build a border wall, but guess what? It shouldn't be from illegals coming into your state. It probably should be from New Yorkers fleeing down into your state that don't know how to vote red. That's where the true border wall should actually be. I've been telling people in Texas, I think there's 2 walls you should be building, one south of the border, and you should be building one that's pointed towards the west, so you can keep the liberals that don't know how to vote right out of your state, so they don't come and wreck and ruin your state as well. I heard that Abbott was down in Texas. He was joking about tariffing those people that come from New York. I think it's a hilarious joke. But honestly, if you're going to flee from New York City, if you're going to go to Texas, if you're going to go to Tennessee, if you're going to go to Florida, don't go there and vote Democrat. What's wrong with you? You're going to get the same thing that you had when you were in New York City. So if you're going to go, why don't you come to the other side of the aisle that's actually fighting for the American people? So let this be a revelation for all of the American people that the radical left has been lying to you. They have been lying and trying to deceive you. And they're trying to lie to you and buy your votes to take care of you from cradle to grave, because they don't want you to be free and independent. They don't want you to be strong and faith-filled. They want you to be dependent on them, because as long as you're dependent on them, you got to keep voting for them so that you can keep your dependency on them. So I'm glad that the American people might have an opportunity to see. And let me just remind the GOP, the only reason this happened is because you got rid of your coward spirit. You've been a coward for so long. That's why most of us, even though we were Republican the side of the aisle with conservative values, we still despised you because you were weak in cowardice. This is why the greatest thing that happened to our nation, second to Jesus Christ, is having Donald Trump as the president of the United States. You might not like everything he says. You might not like all of his comments. You might not like his brass tacks way of doing it. But one thing you can thank God for, he's not a coward. He's not weak. And he's bringing out the strength of the GOP for the first time in my lifetime. And if it wasn't for that, the government shutdown would continue to go on, or the Republicans would be bending the knee as cowards without spines back to the radical left so they can blow out the budget and they can begin to incentivize illegal immigration without assimilation so we can have more Mom Donnies and so our cities can start sounding like Mecca instead of America, like Dearborn, Michigan. But thank God there's a rejection to that. Let this be a sign to the American people that when you go to your midterm elections, vote for the Republicans. It's real easy. If you love America, vote for an R. If you don't like America, vote for a D. Vote for Democrats. If you hate America, then hey, vote for the Democrats. They're going to deliver on hating America, because these are the same folks that got offended at MAGA. It wasn't because of Trump. It was because they never thought America was great. That's what they told us. They said America's inherently evil. America's inherently racist. That's why Barack Hussein wanted to fundamentally transform America. And how did he want to do it? DEI, reverse racism, and come in here and tell us that we're just an evil, bigoted country. So we need to be uprooted. We need to go apologize to every other nation, and we need to destroy America from within. So if that's what you want, keep voting for the Democrat Party. Just because your grandparents were Democrats doesn't mean you have to be a Democrat. Just because your great-grandfather was a Democrat doesn't mean you have to be a Democrat, because the JFK generation is gone. These are not Democrats anymore. These are demon rats that hate our country. They're evil-spirited. They want you to be seduced into their trickery so that you're dependent on them, so that in the long run, you own nothing and you're expected to be happy. And you better act like it, because if you don't act like it, trust me, they're willing to crush you. They'll use federal bureaucrats to go after you. They'll tell parents that you're on the domestic terrorist watch list. Why? Because you didn't want a boy to go into the girl's bathroom and rape your daughter. So now you're a national domestic terrorist. These are the ones that weaponized every department that they could to go after patriots, after Americans, after God-fearing people. These are the ones that said pro-lifers are domestic terrorists. These are the ones that said that Christian pastors need to have their churches shut down and they need to be jailed because they're keeping their church doors open in a very tumultuous time during COVID-19 madness, while they allowed the cannabis selling facilities to stay open, while they allowed the abortion clinics to stay open, while they allowed Home Depot and Walmart to stay open. This is who the radical left is. This is what the Democratic Party is. They're anti-God. They're anti-Jesus. They're anti the Bible. They're anti the Constitution. They're anti the Declaration of Independence. As a matter of fact, they told us that the Declaration of Independence, one of the most beautiful documents and the most beautiful document when it comes to a government, when it comes to a nation, they told us that it was inherently racist because it was written by racist men, and therefore we need to get rid of it. What are we going to replace it with? I don't know. To every man's need, to every man's ability. That sounds like Karl Marx. How did that work in China? How did that work in Russia? How did that work in Cuba? Now it's so insane. Now it's so insane that we got so-called people on the right like Jihadi Candy Owens and Tucker Carlson's and Nick Fuentes, who is actually now trying to rewrite the history of World War II and say that Winston Churchill is the villain, that really we're misunderstanding Hitler. And you have Nick Fuentes saying, there's no way he baked that many millions of batches of cookies, making light of the Holocaust and the extermination of the Jews in the gas chambers, making light of all of that. And they're trying to flip the script and say, really, Hitler was just trying to save Germany because of those evil Jews. This is what we have. And now in America, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to shift into this before we close this out, because I was going to do this in tonight's episode, but we'll come back tomorrow and we'll try to talk about it a little bit more. But let me tell you what's happening right now in America. The radical left lied to us throughout all of COVID-19, that now the people that was fighting against the radical left, now we're having a split on the right. There is the alt far right so-called conservatives, and then there is us conservatives, and then there's the far left, radical leftists, and the Democrats that are being controlled by the radical left. So let me tell you what we have is the true conservatives, and then the fake MAGA, the American isolationists, the anti-Israel crowd, the ones that want to rewrite World War II, and they want to rewrite the history of Churchill and Stalin and Hitler, and they want to paint it as if Hitler was actually trying to protect Germany against all the evil Jews, while simultaneously then the radical left called Trump Hitler, who's defending the Jews. Somebody make sense out of all this. So be not deceived. We cannot fall into radical leftism. Neither can we fall into the crazy alt-right of the jihadi Candy Owens, the Tucker Carlsons, and the Nick Fuentes. There is a middle ground that's called true conservatism. That's called true MAGA, not American isolationism, but America first. And that's what our president believes in. And that's why our president is right. That's what the terrorists are all about. That's what trying to win the AI race is all about. I'm glad that President Trump is the president of the United States, and we need to win in the midterms, and we need to win in 2028. And let this be a sign to you that this government shutdown could have been ended 40 plus days ago if the radical left really cared about you, but they don't. They want to use you for their own advantage. So remember this, because I know the news goes so fast that people forget what happened 6 months later, 7 months later, 8 months later. So I'm going to constantly remind you every month until the midterms, every month until the presidential election, who it was that shut down the government. So you never forget when you go to vote in the midterms and you go to vote in 2028. Well, America, I love you. I'm glad to be back on air tonight. There's two things I love the most. I love sharing the gospel of Jesus Christ with everybody, and I love coming on air and beating up on the radical leftist ideology that's trying to destroy our nation and trying to pull the covers off and expose who they really are. The church will be here tomorrow. Jesus Christ said, upon this rock, the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. But if the republic hasn't totally been burned down by tomorrow, I will see you then. If you like the content, please hit the subscribe button, give us that thumbs up, share us with somebody else, leave a comment. Thank you for those that are leaving comments. I'm seeing the one, just have a Polk County sheriff throughout this nation. That would cure a whole lot of problems. We sure would be able to resolve it. Well, America, I love you. I'll see you tomorrow night. God bless you.